welcome to Busted Speakers. I'm Alex.
And I'm Cam.
And we, Busted Speakers, review Danzig Sins Elvis. Woohoo.
Yay.
Yay, we're over the moon about this album, clearly. Naturally, the main reason I'm reviewing this with Cam is I am a huge Misfits fan. I've just discovered their album Static Age, which I've been listening to non-stop. It's just intense, crazy punk song after another. Still sounds kind of like dangerous and ferocious now, 40 plus years later. I love the album Danzig 2. That is a great, angry, bluesy metal album. And I'm also a huge fan of Elvis. I've been a fan of his for over 9 years. I got 20 albums of his. I've listened to him for ages. He's a legend, obviously. Rock and roll legend. What did you expect from this, Cam? It is Danzig sins Elvis, and he does sin Elvis. So, on a basic level, you get what is on the tin, at least.
Yeah, I know his reputation for being in, the Misfits. I know that Danzig is at least a harder rock band, whether they're still punk or metal or whatever they are. So I thought, okay, if he goes in either of those directions, this could be pretty interesting. I'm not saying that, hard rock Elvis covers is the most unique idea ever, but, at least it would be something that I could talk about.
Well, he has always been said to have a voice back in the day that was sort of similar to Jim Morrison and Elvis, so in a way you could say this is a kind of obvious direction for him to go to. First of all, let's talk about the song selection. Now, these songs are very unusual ones. He doesn't go for the big hits here for Elvis. He doesn't go for the most obvious songs. These are really obscure album tracks, most of which are from albums from the 50s. How many of these were you even aware of before, Kim?
Personally, I don't think I'd ever heard of any of these. Now, granted, I only have 3 Elvis albums, if you split up the Legacy edition of Elvis Presley that I have.
Yeah.
And the Way Down in the Jungle Room compilation. So, I was like, okay, so is this going to be all the hits or well-known tracks, which would be an obvious way to go, or maybe it'll be something more clever and unique, like maybe doing just soundtrack songs, and some of these are from movies, from what I can tell.
Yeah, Pocket Full of Rainbows is from GI Blues, a couple of others are maybe from some movies, but most of these are from his pre-movies 50s albums.
Wow.
Album cuts. There's only 3 songs here that could be called hits. One Night, which is the cover, is the only single for Danzig here. Fever, which is more famous for Peggy Lee doing it than Elvis, but he did do a version in 1960. And the most interesting one always on my mind is actually been covered better twice before by Willie Nelson and Pet Shop Boys. So, do we need another cover of that? It's questionable. But I have to commend Danzig. This is not the usual run-of-the-mill greatest hits selection. These are selections that come from someone who is obviously a fan of Elvis, knows his back catalogue really well, goes for some really obscure hits, and shows that he's, must be a fan to know these songs. He must take influence from him somewhere, especially with his voice sounding a bit like Elvis. Like you, I was thinking, how is he going to cover this? How is he going to make these covers interesting? And how necessary is this album? I don't know what I wanted from this, to be honest. I saw Danzig sins Elvis and I was momentarily really excited. I was thinking, what has Glenn done here? He's going to cover some Elvis songs, but how is he going to do it? I don't know what I wanted from this. I was hoping he'd provide something. I thought he'd make the song sound more dangerous or rocked out or more radical, but then again, how radical can you make songs ballads from 60 plus years ago? This is kind of what I should have expected, to be honest. As someone who's not even familiar with much Danzig or Elvis, how was this even just as a general listening experience, Cam?
As a listening experience, it felt like Elvis could have cut demos that sounded better than these songs.
Yeah, there's some real production mixing problems here, for sure.
Oh, good lord.
To put it nicely, there's way too much reverb echo on his voice.
Mm-hmm.
His voice is just too loud in general in the mix, so much that on Fever, when he's singing, you can't even hear the bass. You can only hear the bass in between his vocals, which is not ideal on a song where the main instrument is the bass. So, instruments are just produced and mixed inconsistently here. Sometimes the drumming is really loud, sometimes the bass is too loud, sometimes everything just melds together in a guitar feedback mess. So yeah, it's definitely some production and mixing problems on here.
I really struggle to find anything else to say, because whether or not these are good choices for covers, whether or not they're good performances vocally, it's all just like buried under the fact that the mixing makes the album pretty much completely unlistenable. I forget if we've ever actually left in any of the times that I've talked about panning in our recent reviews, because it is a thing that comes up every now and then.
Not recently.
Yeah. But it's just something that comes up a lot of the time, because it's just something that I tend to notice because of my listening habits when I was in high school, and it's always just kind of stuck with me. But you say you don't really notice it all that often.
Yeah, I don't really notice it that much. I grew up on the 2009 remasters of Beatles albums, and that was just how they were mixed. They were mixed incredibly both sides of the earphones. So I don't think I noticed it that much.
Yeah, but did you notice it on this one?
Not really. There were some other problems, like lack of good content to deal with.
And that's fair, but like that to me is just like that's the one of the biggest things that stood out, is like this is how to do hard panning badly. Like there's no good reason for it. It's like his voice is the only thing that is like evenly mixed in the channels, and then everything else is like all the way to the left and all the way to the right.
I think I noticed it the most on this track Love Me, which is a soppy ballad. I'm not a fan of those songs. Like, I don't want to hear Glenn Danzig sing ballads like First in Line, Young and Beautiful, and Love Me. They don't work. On that song, the piano and guitar, they don't mesh at all because I think of hard panning. It's either a piano ballad on one side of the earphones or a really bad karaoke cover with guitar that doesn't even fit on that song. Like, it doesn't really work.
This is so hard to talk about without just panning it.
Yeah, nice one.
I hate myself and I want to die.
Is this a necessary release? Not really. I feel like it was something Glenn did because he just felt like it, which is fair enough. Most of these aren't even that different from the originals, especially the ballads. I don't know what I wanted from this. I don't know if I wanted full-on Misfits Danzig versions of these songs, like, especially with lyrics that are just love ballads or just love songs. It's hard to make them dangerous or evil sounding when, you know, they've got lyrics like this. But it can be done. Heartbreak Hotel, another Elvis song, was covered by John Cale in the early 70s, and he made a demented, crazy version out of it, so it can be done, but not on here. I have to give credit to Tommy Victor, who's Danzig's guitarist. The biggest advantage or difference from the originals on this album is he injects a lot of really good guitar playing on these songs that weren't on the originals. So you've got some guitar solos or riffs on songs like Baby Let's Play House or When It Rains It Really Pours. On sort of mid-tempo rockers, you kind of get a little bit of that Danzig fury. Girl of My Best Friend is probably the most different to the original, as it gets rid of the harmonies and backing vocals of the original and just replaces it with a droning guitar part. So that song was probably the most effective cover. This is kind of what I should have expected from Danzig Sings Elvis. He does sing Elvis. Sometimes he sings a bit too much like Elvis, and, you know, he hams it up a bit too much. I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but sometimes I forget I'm listening to Glenn, and I tune out and just think it's Elvis, because he, like, apes his vocals too much or something. It just doesn't sound like Glenn to me. Take that for what you will. It's a competent covers album, and it's definitely listenable. But is it much more? I can't really say so. Okay, what would you give this album, Ken?
Sounds like I might be a little bit harder on it than you, or maybe a lot.
We'll see.
It's so frustrating because, like, all the issues that I listed, you know, made it very unlistenable for me. And he just said that he didn't think it was wholly unlistenable.
Well, you can listen to anything, technically.
I don't want to re-listen to it is the thing. Like, I'm gonna hope that this is just, like, a perfect storm of, like, bad decisions and bad timing. Like, maybe if he had made this, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, it could have come out better, like, especially with his voice, because he does have, like, he can sing, but there's just something to his voice, I don't know, it sticks a lot or something, and it's just kind of hard to listen to. Like, he sings, and I want to clear my throat, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely noticed that as well, actually.
Yeah.
And I think it might just be this session because I've heard some live footage of him performing stuff like Last Caress recently, and he sounded pretty good. So I just think Elvis was a better singer than Glenn Danzig for this type of stuff. So he made ballads sound more authentic and stuff. I just think Glenn, he can do Danzig and Misfits material really well. I just don't think he can properly do this stuff convincingly.
Yeah, so I am going to give this 3 out of 10.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just too many big issues on every song for it to be any more than that. I'm sorry.
I'm going to give this 5 out of 10. It's not terrible. It's just not necessary. There is no necessity to this album. He doesn't sing it very differently. The song choice, while admirably rarer stuff than you might expect, too many ballads. I wanted more rockers that he could do. Give me the more rare stuff. Just give me more interesting stuff than this. His voice is kind of shot. The mixing and production is kind of bad. However, guitarist Tommy Victor kind of saves half the songs. And, you get a song or two that are kind of good. So, I don't know, 5 out of 10. It's listenable, it's serviceable. It's not necessary, but if you want Glenn sings Elvis, this is that.
Alright, and that does us for Danzig Sings Elvis. Thanks for tuning in to Busted Speakers, everybody. Leave this video a thumbs up if you liked it. You can follow us on Twitter at _BustedSpeakers. You can follow me on Twitter at SubProspector. Check us out on Facebook, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you all next time. Bye.
See ya.